You're going to be one of those people that make a mark on your generation and be well rewarded at the judgment seat of Christ. I see this world, I see the shape it's in, but I refuse to watch it go to hell. I believe God has called me and anointed me to rescue my generation and to impact my nation with the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you're one of those people, clap those hands, shout unto God one more time with the voice of triumph. Come on, let God hear you today. God has an army that hasn't given up. Shout hallelujah.
Merry Christmas, everybody. So, once upon a time, goblins went on Earth in the sea.
We're gonna cut that. We're gonna cut that just now. That's nothing to do with anything. Okay, see you later.
Bye.
Christmas time is here. It's time to spread some cheer. It's food and fun for everyone. It's the greatest time of the year. December marks the time for something truly sublime. Winter days filled with your favorite things. Christmas movies, cookies, sledding. It's fun and food galore. Oh, Jesus. Christmas time is here. It's time to spread some cheer. It's food and fun for everyone. It's the greatest time of the year.
And they'll have more than enough. Say that, even in famine. I'll have more than enough. There are people watching all these conspiracy websites and stuff back when the recession hit. Food will be off the shelves in 1 hour. So what? We're in West Virginia. You could fire a bullet in any direction and have 400 pounds of venison. Hit 3 deer with 1 bullet. Even if what they said came to pass, we'd probably eat better than we did before it went bad. I had a deer run out and hit my car on Monday night when I was driving home. I wonder if deer have a secret religion that if you get hit by a car, you get 72 virgin deer in deer heaven. We'll never know. Because have you ever hit one of them? They're on on the side of the road and they start looking at you, and you know, you're like, don't do it. It's looking at you, I'm gonna do it. You just say, no, stay there. What are you doing? I'm telling you, I could see it in its eye.
All right, get Teddy up right away.
You white-tailed jihadist, stay there.
Welcome to a very warm Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 50 degrees on our final broadcast of 2018. Great job, everybody in the studio, Kofi, New Girl, Ram, and Nick. We did it, a full year. Thanks for joining us on this surprise broadcast. I know you didn't know I was coming on. For those of you that are on, if you'd share the broadcast, we started doing these the last week of December in 2017 and didn't know how we'd be able to do it with a full traveling schedule, and here we are. Television, Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope, and we have some big announcements, but today is not the day for big announcements. Today is the year-end spectacular, and so, where can I put this? Just basically wanted to wish you a happy new year before I get to see you at the 2019 New Year celebration. Did you guys play that ad yet? No, not yet. Okay. Well, this is, they'll play it, or what, you gotta like cut Teddy off and then put to play it? Well then, you'll have to do that. 2019 New Year celebration. We still have seats available, so you're welcome to come if you don't have anything to do or anywhere to go. And boy, does it pain my heart to see people from like Indiana and Ohio say, I wish I could be there. You have a car. If you don't have a car, they have a bus. They actually have Mega Bus that's $1 to sit. So it's the mind that like it's not in your living room, so you can't go. We'd love to have you. 2019 New Year celebration at the Doubletree by Hilton, 340 Racetrack Road in Washington, Pennsylvania. Free parking. $60, you're having a sit-down meal. I think we're having like filet mignon or whatever, so the money's for your meal. It's not me trying to financially take advantage of you. And you'll get to ring in the new year right. How you start a year is important, and I would say this is the best way you could start a year. So enjoy the ad, and then I'll catch you on the other side. Go ahead. What's up? This is Jonathan Shuttlesworth, and I want to invite you to spend New Year's Eve with us. We have people ask when it is. We always hold it on New Year's Eve this year at the Doubletree Hotel in Washington, Pennsylvania. It's $60 a person. That covers your meal, and you're going to get to meet hundreds of people from all over the world that love the Lord. When you're a Christian, New Year's Eve's tricky. You either have to stay home or end up going to a place and start the year in sin. We give you a third option, which is to take the first hours of a new year and give them to the Lord. And I'm telling you, it makes a great difference. So I'll see you December 31st. Please register today. We only have 300 spots, and I'll see you soon. God bless you. 2019 New Year celebration. Hope to see you there. That's in Pittsburgh. That's in just a couple days. And then I have another surprise for you, which is I was asked to speak at my home church, Champion Christian Center, since we're leading up into fasting and prayer. I'll be there January 2nd through I don't know what date, but we're doing 21 days of prayer and fasting together. If you've not seen it, we have that on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Jonathan Shuttlesworth. I have it archived, Why We Pray and Fast, but I'm going to do an introduction to that Sunday morning. So when you go to church Sunday morning, if you're anywhere near Pittsburgh, Champion Christian Center, I'm going to do all 3 morning services, 9 o'clock a.m., 10 o'clock a.m., and 11 o'clock a.m. 2 are in Canonsburg, 1's in Washington, which is just south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hey, the Satoli family, if you're who I think you are from your little picture, we love you. Glad that you're here. So Sunday morning, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and 11 a.m., that's in Pittsburgh. Good to see you, Janie, Martha, Justin, Emma, Abby. Welcome to the broadcast. If you've not shared the broadcast, feel free to share. Good Lord, you take 3 days off and the crowd goes missing. But that's okay. Let me know when our special guest is on. So January 2nd, how it's going to work for the new year is we'll do the 10 a.m. broadcast to kick off prayer and fasting. Noon prayer, noon to 1 at Champion Christian Center in Washington. And then we'll do 7 o'clock breakthrough services every night. I hope you'll be there. Hey, Manny, good to see you. Tomorrow. Please welcome, all the way from Parkland, Florida, my cousin, the best man in my wedding, evangelist Teddy Shuttlesworth, Jr. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, by just a virtue of poor communication, I thought I was supposed to be on at 10:15 p.m. last night. So I've just been sitting here waiting since last night at 10:15 p.m. I just want to say from the top of the broadcast, that was supposed to be my meeting in Pennsylvania. They had me scheduled to do the beginning of the year, and they canceled me when they found out you were available. So cheers.
Is that true, actually?
No, it couldn't be any more false.
Because it sounded like something that could happen. And then I would have felt like I should feel bad.
Felt like a heel.
Well, what we plan to do today is let you hear some stories. Of course, Teddy and I grew up in preachers' homes. We've been on the road. And like happens with stand-up comedians or any job where you travel a lot and are around a bunch of different people in a bunch of odd situations, you come across some funny stories. So we thought we'd end the year with a merry heart doeth good like a medicine and just let you hear some things. If you always look at my cousin and I and we have this twinkle in our eye and a smirk on our face, this will let you know some of the things that happen that make us just constantly happy. And so, Teddy, I wanted to hear your top story off the bat.
One of my favorite stories of all time is the story of what happened at, remember when Papa was pastoring, our grandfather was pastoring the church, and he had that guest minister in? That's one of my favorite stories. Is like the guy is preaching, and he's going hard, like left and right, pacing the aisle, stalking the front, and preaching. I mean, like laying it down. He was a Pentecostal preacher. And then while he's preaching, he just starts going up the middle aisle of the church, and he's preaching hard and preaching, and he goes out and out into the lobby, and he's still, you can still hear him preaching. And then all of a sudden,
this was at Pap's church?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know it happened in his meeting. I just know the story.
Yeah, I believe so. So he goes up. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it didn't happen in the church, but I thought it did. He's preaching out the side, goes out, then this preaching stops, and it's just silent. And maybe you're right. Maybe it didn't happen in the church, but he goes out, and there's this. Everybody's in their pew, everybody's in their seat. Nothing, silence. Preacher's gone, and everybody just kind of sitting there. 5 minutes goes by, 7, nothing. So the pastor finally gets up and says, "Listen, I know this man. He's a man of God. If he's doing this, it's some sort of an illustration. He's trying to show us something. So let's just hang tight. God's got something for us out of this meeting." 5 more meetings goes by, nothing. Nobody's there. All of a sudden, after about 10, 15 minutes, the side door of the sanctuary opens, and the preacher comes back in, preaching right where he left off without missing a beat, and preached the rest of the service, closed it, altar service, whatever. Never referenced the fact that he left, ever. And so, it was confusing because nobody knew what that was about. So they go back up to the pastor's house after the service and come in, and they're eating lunch, and the pastor's like, "Brother, we were all wondering about today. You went out. It was a good 10, 15 minutes while you were gone, and we were just trying to figure out what was the spiritual significance of that when you did that." He said, "Oh, Doc, your people were sitting on me, so I came back up here to the house and had a bologna sandwich and a Pepsi."
Hey, let me ask you a question and see if you're anything like me. Once you heard that story, how many times in the last 10 years have you considered doing that? Now that you know that it's been done, in a certain setting.
Many times.
Have you seriously?
Yeah, if you're just in one of those situations where you know, it feels like, you know, you can tell that the anointing's there, but the people are just like resisting it. And you're just like, what the heck's going on with this? You know, you're just like,
Go up to the parsonage, make yourself a meal, casually eat it, and then come back and finish the meeting.
Nothing makes you feel better than having a bologna sandwich and a Pepsi.
Agree to disagree. All right. Number 2. Oh wait, let me make a request. Let me hear. Tell the text message LOL story.
Oh yeah, I heard this was told from a pastor. There's a lady in his church that had this happen. This lady in the church who was getting up in years, she was probably in her late 70s, early 80s, and always had like a real heart of compassion for everyone in the church. And she was always one of those ladies that, you know, if anybody was ever going through an issue, she was an intercessor, but also like, you know, would do things to bless them, help them. So she wanted to get into the technological age and went out and bought a smartphone. And and I didn't realize this till later because our great grandmother used to do this. But so she got into some problems because when people would start having things happen, tragedies or things in their church, people in the church that going through stuff, she thought, you know, I want to be an encouragement to the people. So she would go with her new smartphone, she would text them, you know, whatever their tragedy was. And then she would text them like a message, and she would write like, this is what people were getting on their phone. Heard the doctor said it's cancer, LOL. or it would be like, heard your husband just left you and left the kids with nothing, LOL. Praying for you. But what she didn't know was that, you know, everything had changed, you know, since she was younger. So like even when our great grandmother used to send us letters, you know, people used to sign it LOL back then because it meant lots of love. But she didn't know that it had changed to laughing out loud. So she's thinking she's sending everybody lots of love. And everybody's like getting super offended. Like people are contacting the pastor and like, this lady has a serious problem. How could this woman in the church find out that I have cancer and mock it on a text message to me? How could this woman find out my husband left me and my kids high and dry and mock it on a text message? So she's like, the pastor to like call her in and explain to her like, that actually means like LOL. People write it when they're like laughing at you.
I'm picturing her walking in on Sunday morning and like 30% of the church is glaring at her and she has no idea.
What's
like,
your
contemplating
problem?
Punching her in the face.
Probably were like angry, you know, the most serious moments of like tragedy in somebody's life. You get a text message.
LOL.
Yeah. Like, what is she sarcastically praying for me? She's not actually praying. She found out that I have cancer and she refuses to pray. I don't understand. Speaking of old ladies, how about that time that youth pastor that we knew thought it would be a funny idea to buy that Halloween mask? Remember that?
Oh, I forgot about that.
That was your friend, right, from Bible school?
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot about that. That was like...
He went to Texas and got that job as a youth pastor. Tell that story. That's a great one.
You tell it. I just remember like the basics of him getting fired for it.
He thought it would be funny. This is back when MTV and, you know, Johnny Knoxville had launched their show, Jack $$, and so everybody was trying to make those funny videos with their camcorder and everything. I just did that like Jimmy Swaggart pull your collar thing. Let's just go ahead and undo the collar during the holidays. It's okay. Put on a few pounds. Just in lieu of the fast coming. So he thought it would be hilarious to like get one of those like really scary Halloween masks at the store and film a prank video of him scaring the church secretary, who was up in years too. She was probably like early 70s. And so he sets up his camcorder, puts the mask on, and then hides like in the lobby of the church, where like in the drapery like of the one of the walls, so that he's like plainly visible, but the lights are already low because they're locking up the church for the day. So she's like locking up the front office and, you know, putting everything in her desk. And she comes out into the lobby, and he's just standing there with the mask on. And she comes out and her eyes are wide, and she's like, "Who are you?" And like, he won't respond. He's just glaring at her through the mask. And she screams like in a horror movie, runs out of the church lobby into the street, and like runs. They found her like 3 miles down the road. She like ran and ran and ran. She like ran. He thought it was hilarious. He thought he got a great video. Like, so he got it all on video. They thought it was funny until like the pastor in the church found out about it. And apparently it was like a huge issue.
Well, he thought once she found out about it, she would like everybody'd have a laugh. She ended up like having to go to counseling.
For a while.
And then the video that he shot was like court evidence of like mental assault.
That's true. She did go to counseling for like a long time. And then, I mean, he was like instantly fired from his job.
Well, you know, it's a tough period of life when you go from like 17 to 23. Because like at 17, something's a prank. But at 22, it's a crime.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So like you're still kind of doing stuff to make people laugh, but then it's like, you know, the consequences are different.
Very, very true. That I wish that I could have like been there to see that. You know, because like I remember seeing on YouTube when that pastor pranked his youth pastor. Remember that, when the kid like slipped up when he was preaching on YouTube?
Yes.
And he couldn't get his words right. But then I don't know if you saw the re-prank where like the pastor called him into the office. Did you see that?
No.
So after that happened and that funny video hit YouTube and it went viral, the pastor got like in league with these other guys that had a prank YouTube channel and called that youth pastor into his office and had like fake papers on his desk from like the FCC and said like they found out about what happened at our church, you know, which if the youth pastor was like intelligent, he's like, the FCC doesn't even govern YouTube. But he was like, we've been fined, you know, $73,000. And I just, you know, I can't do it. One of the stipulations is that we have to let you go. And he was like, Pastor, no, it was an accident. I didn't mean to say it. He's like, oh, we're firing you today. So like I have like 6 cameras on him in the room. So I can imagine like with that being a mistake, the other kid doing it on purpose, I would have loved to be able to see his face as the pastor, like as he thought everybody was going to just have a laugh about it. But like when he got fired, like what? It was just a joke. It would have been hilarious to watch him get fired.
Brother Ted, we had a mutual friend who's since passed on. That was a unique individual, Brother Tom McGinnis, that pastored in Holtzville, Long Island. who just to give everybody watching some context, if you live in the Northeast, I would say Pittsburgh, maybe West Virginia up to Boston. We do this thing in the Northeast of the United States. Well, what the term is, you can't really say on like a Christian broadcast, but it's like giving somebody a hard time. Where like if you see somebody, instead of saying hello, you say like, hey, did somebody cut your hair with a weed whacker? Or you just like find something to like mess with them. So you like insult people, which Donald Trump is from New York City. So I think it's why a lot of the country doesn't get him, because in New York, that's just how you communicate with people. You like give them a nickname to make fun of them, but it doesn't go over well in the rest of the country. And it certainly doesn't go over well in church. Christians are some of the least sarcastic people, and they don't appreciate sarcasm other than the band
chagrin
of weirdos that join me on our broadcast every day that somehow are like the misfits of Christianity that like that enjoy sarcasm. So this pastor, Tom McGinnis, before he was a pastor, was an abusive alcoholic. He got saved later in life, but after he got saved, he still, you know, it's not like he was transformed into an angel. He was still like him, or like a rough New York Union Irish guy. So when he would be in settings with other Christians and ministers, and he had a large church, about 1,000 on Sunday morning, it was one of the funniest things that you could ever see happen, because he would insult everybody, and it wasn't some kind of act like that he did for church. He would insult everybody at all times. So I just wanted, I know you spent more time with him than I did. I didn't spend a lot of time with him. I would just spend time walking around 15 feet behind him to watch people's horrified faces when he insulted them. But for people that didn't meet him, I wanted to give the background of who he was. And then to picture him, he had this big shock of white Irish hair, like huge white hair, big bushy white eyebrows, and the meanest face. His mouth was like in a permanent scowl, and he would just like glare at you and then insult you. And let me add this before you tell whatever good stories you have from him. He was also different in that, like me, like if I insult somebody on purpose, if they get upset, I'll stop. And then if they like it, I'll do it more. If he insulted you and you liked it, he'd stop. And then if you bristled or had like this like religious, like you thought a lot of yourself, it was like blood in the water for a shark. So I'll let you take it from there now that I've set up who the human being is.
It was so great. And, you know, one of my favorite things about him is, and this probably was, it would make me laugh as hard as anything, is just the way he would look at people. He had this way of looking at you just like he was in complete disgust at your existence.
And disappointment, like disgust and disappointment in equal measure.
He'd give you this face like,
yeah.
Just shake his head no, like, what's the matter with you? Why are you like this? You know, I remember the first time I ever met him. This is my encounter meeting him, a pastor, for the very first time. We're in a tent meeting with Brother Schambach in New York. And I had heard so much about him from people. I was like, oh, I can't wait to meet him. And I was only like 19 or 18, something like that. So I went up to him and I was like, you know, my smile's real big on top anyway. Like, you know, and if I'm smiling real big, like, you know, so I go up to him and I'm like, hey, Pastor McGinnis, nice to meet you. And I'm smiling at him. He just turns to his wife and he goes, look at the gums on this kid. He goes, close your mouth. He said, close your mouth. That was my introduction to media. Look at the gums on this kid. Close your mouth. He's like, I love the acting. You know, it brings out your tie. I love the acting. Brings out your tie.
Okay, let me tell one, and then you go back to him. We may end up just telling stories about Brother McGinnis for the rest of the broadcast. My Uncle Ted holds a camp meeting every April and a lot of ministers attend. So this was the best place to meet Brother McGinnis, because if he got any kind of sense that a minister thought a lot of himself and carried himself like he was like really special, he would make a point to make sure that the guy felt very unspecial by the end of him talking to him. And then the other combination there would be people that were just like very kind-hearted, good-natured Christians that you could tell had never been around like an insulting New Yorker. So the best one I ever saw was there's a traveling minister named Dave Vibbert. He's be about 70 years old now, right, Teddy?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like the nicest guy you'd ever meet. So picture, he walks up to this guy, Tom McGinnis, not knowing who he is and not knowing what he does. He walks up to him in the parking lot after the church service lets out. And he says, hi, Brother Tom, like in the nicest, like Indiana voice. Hi, Brother Tom. I heard a lot about you. I heard you have a great church. I wanted to give you my new CD that I just recorded, because he's like one of those evangelists that travels and has, like, sings and then preaches. Wanted to give you the new CD that I just recorded. Tom McGinnis takes it from his hand and goes, "Thank you very much," and wings it like a frisbee into the woods and walks away. And he just stood there with his mouth open, and the next person that walked by, he went, "That man, it just took my CD I gave him and threw it in the woods. That man is the rudest man I've ever met in my life." So, you had to pretend like you empathized with him, when in the inside, you thought it was the fun. You wished he would, do it again. Anytime, and I promise you, unless Jesus comes, in the next 2 months, the next time somebody arrogantly hands me a book they wrote, I will fling it across the church. Because ever since I've heard that, I've been jonesing to grab something somebody gives you and fling it. You're up.
One of the things that made me laugh is that he didn't care what the setting was. He would do that, act like that, even if he was preaching. Even if he was ministering in his own church. There was a time he was calling this guy out in the gifts to minister to him. He was like, "Sir, step out in the aisle. The Lord has a word for you." And you know how people do. They always look around "You mean me?" And he's like, "Yes, you with the suit that almost fits."
Yeah. Yeah, he called people out for the word of knowledge. Like my Uncle Ted will say, this lady with the red hair, or this man in the blue jeans with the T-shirt on, stand in the aisle and lift your hands. He would call people out by insult. You in the jacket that almost fits. This lady with the haircut like a lampshade. Stand up and lift your hands. And the thing was, he was anointed. He wasn't like some buffoon. He had 1,000 people in his church on Sunday morning. I'll tell one and then you can go. He had this large lady give her testimony on the platform. When she finished giving her testimony, he just it was like breathing to him. Took the microphone and said, "Thank you very much. Let's give her a round of applause, everybody, and a round of applause for what the Lord did in her life. Ushers, help her to her seat. If she falls, we'll have to build a basement where she lands." And if you were in his church, half the people would laugh hard and half the people would gasp, in horror. It was if you enjoy awkwardness, he was like Disney World to be around.
He was the best ever. I remember there was a time I heard this. I wasn't there for it. His church was not responding the way that he wanted them to respond. I guess they were dead that morning. They weren't shouting, whatever it might be. He just walked behind the platform to where the baptismal was, got the fire hose from behind the
fire
thing.
Extinguisher?
No. The hose. And turned it on and hosed down the whole crowd from the platform.
On Sunday morning?
Yeah. Because they weren't responding. He was they were dead. So he just went and hosed them down with the hose. Can you imagine that? That's awesome.
That's the thing, we know these stories, so when people are like, "Man, you and your cousin are crazy," we're thinking this, not that crazy. There's another level you can take it to.
What was one of my favorites too is he came to our church in Virginia Beach for my Uncle Terry, and I was leading the choir at that time. And he just went in on my choir members, after they went off the platform. He just came off the platform and said to one of the ladies, because I don't know if she just looked older than the other, if she just looked older than the other people in the choir. He went, "I can see from you, ma'am, there's no age limit to the choir." and then said to another lady in the choir, he looked at her with that disgusting look. He went, "Look at you sitting there." He's like, What he's like, "What do they do when you want to cross your leg? They bring a crane out of the ceiling to help you?"
She never came back to any of those.
She never came back ever. Seriously, if it was announced he was going to be there, she would not come.
I'll tell you
what about
Go ahead.
We were at my dad's camp meeting with, he was coming out, and many people probably know the bass player that travels with us, and he's done Festival of Life, and comes to when I'm doing those meetings. Great guy, John Grimsley, so nice. He was so nice to Brother McGinnis too. And Brother McGinnis looked at him.
Deserved what they got.
Yeah, he was so nice to Brother McGinnis. He was like, "Oh, Brother McGinnis, so nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you, sir." And Brother McGinnis just gave him that look like he was disgusted. He's like, "So what do? You just travel around and play the bass around the country?" He went, "No, actually, I'm a pastor of a couple of churches." And he went, "Oh, really? You'd never know it."
I'll tell you, like everybody that's watching, you hear these stories. I would tell my brother-in-law, Steve Giswaldi, that's married to my sister up in Montreal, I would tell him all these stories. So I would be like, "Man, you got to meet him. You have to come to something that he's at so you can meet him. It's hilarious just listening to him insult everybody." So we're at my grandfather's funeral down in West Virginia, and right before it's getting ready to start, Brother McGinnis walks in from Long Island in West Virginia, like he came to pay his respects to my grandfather because they got along really well. So when I see him, which I realize now is kind of like an inappropriate time, I was like so excited because my brother-in-law Steve was there and Brother McGinnis was there. So I took him. I was like, "That's Brother McGinnis. You got to meet him." So I bring him over. I go, "Pastor McGinnis, this is my brother-in-law Steve Giswaldi. I wanted him to meet you." And he did that. Looked at him with that like disgust. This is at a funeral. And my brother-in-law is like the most polite individual you'd ever meet. Like, "Hello, Pastor Tom." He went, Are you the one that rented the orange economy car at the hotel?" Which, like, how he knew what car my brother-in-law rented, because my brother-in-law got like the economy class rental car, like the Nissan Versa that was like burnt orange. So, "Are you the one that rented the ugly economy car in the hotel parking lot?" Yeah, yeah, that is my car. He went, How cheap can you possibly be? Risk your family's life to save gas money," and then turned away. So the next trip we go on, my brother-in-law is flying in on a separate flight, and we're all meeting to stay at the same house. My brother-in-law shows up in like the Infinity SUV for him and my sister. Like they didn't even have a Stella yet. And so he gets out of the car. I went, "This is due to what Brother McGinnis said, isn't it?" He went, "Probably." Like, now he rents the largest car possible. Yeah, there he is. That's him. He was the best. Let me ask you this before you tell the next story about Brother McGinnis.
Did they show a picture of him?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'll tell you a story after that.
But I want to ask you this, because I've wondered this. Like, okay, he's in heaven now. If you're not allowed to do that in heaven, or like because of you being in the presence of God, like that takes that away from you, he wouldn't be him anymore. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, how does that work?
He's going to show up when you get there at the pearly gates. He's going to give you that look and be like, "I thought they were going to give you a glorified body."
Yeah, like, I'll be relieved if he does that. If he doesn't do that, I'll be like, it's not him.
You'll be known as you were known. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe the case will be that any part of us that found it funny to see other people insulted or hurt.
Then you might as well kill me.
I just don't know, like, how people will be insulted in heaven because, like, your emotions, everything about you will be perfected. I don't know why I said it like that. Perfected. But
hey, man,
I was going to say perfect. But you know what I mean? I think, when you're in the direct presence of God, I think other things pretty much kind of fall to the wayside.
I don't know.
I don't know.
That'll be. Not that anything's going to disappoint you in heaven, but I'd have a hard time not being disappointed if he was just like, sitting and like asked me how I'm doing today. I would just be grieved.
If he was sitting in heaven listening to all those CDs ministers have given him over the years.
As punishment. It's like purgatory. Go ahead. Do another Brother McGinnis story, because I know we're leaving a ton out.
Well, the funny thing is that you would look at him and wonder how he could make fun of anyone else. Because if you saw the picture, what did the picture look like that they just set up?
It's the one of him in his office in a black suit, like
Okay,
smiling.
well, let me just say this. He was never in a black suit. I don't know why that would have been the promo picture that anyone would have taken of him. Brother McGinnis was never in a black suit. His suits were always like fuchsia pink, electric blue, bright yellow, red, orange, with matching fuchsia alligator shoes, you know. So, you know, you would look at him with those eyebrows and that hair and the suits and you'd wonder to yourself.
Tell what he wore when you picked him up from the airport.
That's what I'm setting up. You're in the spirit, Brother John. I can just remember thinking, like, how does he get away with making fun of everybody, like looking like that? But then also I thought later, like, that's probably how he gets away with it, is that people look at him like that he's making fun of them, and they look at him and think, like, how is this guy making fun of me? And they probably think, like, he's probably insane.
Right. He looked insane when you would like meet him casually.
Because the thing is, he didn't just do that to people he knew or people like in church. He did it everywhere he went. Like, I've been downtown New York in like Jamaica, Queens with him, Harlem and he would just do it to people on the street,
right.
Like in Jamaica, Queens and Harlem. Like, we'd go into a suit shop where you can get 3 fuchsia suits for $250. And he'd be getting stuff, roasting guys, like hood guys that worked in the store, to their faces. I remember my Uncle Terry telling me one time, like, he did it so much on the street that a guy was ready to fight him. And he, like, got into a cab just in time. And, like, they left. But, like, he didn't care who the person was. You know what I mean? He did it to everybody. So, like, it was funny because my Uncle Terry was having him in to speak at the church. And I was tasked with picking him up from the airport. So I'm waiting for him at baggage claim. But I can hear him coming before he ever comes. Like, in the Norfolk airport, there's like a concourse between the gates and the baggage claim where there's like one of those moving walkways, and then there's escalators down to baggage claim. I can hear him coming across the concourse mocking people. Like, I can hear his booming voice. I can hear his booming voice coming across the concourse, and then he comes down the stairs. He's coming down the escalator with his wife, who is an angel, by the way. An absolute angel. Like, no one nicer. And he would mock her, too. Like, he would mock her in front of people. And he's coming down the escalator, mocking people, and I look at what he's wearing. And he had on this, I don't know, it's like, I don't know how you even put this outfit together without like supernatural help. He had on an orange Hawaiian shirt that was too big for him, black tuxedo pants with the satin stripe going down, going into white New Balance walking shoes with NASCAR brand racing glasses on, with the string that goes around your neck in the back to hold the glasses on, with that shock of white hair and the eyebrows, and mocking people mercilessly. I mean, he looked like he had just lost everything he had in Vegas, and he was coming home from like. It's like I don't
like
even know how you put that outfit together. Like a video game character
you're designing that you hit the randomize button.
Yeah, it's like, who even puts that together? Like, why? I was thinking of questions like this. Like, why did you even have tuxedo pants available with the satin stripe? Like, how did how did you have an orange Hawaiian shirt available next to some random tuxedo pants that weren't on a hanger with the rest of the tuxedo? Like, and then the white New Balance walking shoes. I was like befuddled.
You know, before you tell it, Pastor Rodney flew him with him to South Africa, and he was doing his thing, on the plane. And
Yeah.
Pastor Rodney had to convince them that he had dementia, and he like doesn't know what he's saying, or they were gonna land the plane and get him off. And like, cause he was dressed, how he was dressed, it was believable that he was like insane.
Oh man, yeah, and it was, but it was hilarious because I honestly believe that that's how he got away with it. So much, because he would just constantly do it.
Yeah, because
he said
if you were looking like you took yourself seriously and insulting people, then it's just like mean. But when you can tell you also don't care about, I don't know, he just had the perfect combo. I'll tell you, I preached for him one time. It was on a Saturday night. I was probably 26, and it was the first year I was married. So Sunday morning, I'd preach Saturday night. Sunday morning, he goes, one of the interesting things our evangelist said last night, then looks at me and goes, actually, the only interesting thing our evangelist said. So, yeah, so then we go to Carmine's after the meeting. And it was me and Adalis and him and his wife, and then he brought, I think, 2 other couples from the church. One of the couples, they were his age. The husband just had a stroke, like a major stroke. So he can't speak. I mean, he's like just out of the hospital. So you would think that would garner you like some relief from the insulting. So his wife, he points at the menu and his wife orders for him. Pastor Tom goes, is she gonna have to chew your food for you too? and the guy laughing like, but he can't talk. So he's like with his like jaw like, so like because he's laughing, he keeps insulting him. He's like, it's nice how your chin just hangs down like that now. So he's like laughing more, and then the guy with the arm he can still move is like motioning for him to stop because it's making him laugh too much. I was like in like shock. I'd never been around him. So then our waiter comes, and our waiter is like, I know they say being gay is not a choice, but there's a level of gayness that's definitely a choice. So like he was at like that. He was at that level, right? So he comes and does like the presentation for the meal. He's like, my name's Mark. I'll be your server today. Welcome to Karma. He goes, let me stop you right there. Your voice is so annoying. There's no way I could possibly enjoy my meal with you being my server. I know the manager, his name's, whatever his name was. Go tell him I'd like another server. And the guy goes, seriously? and he goes, yes, I'm very serious. I can't take your voice. It's nauseating to me. So the manager, like, it comes over and intervenes. He's like, oh, I know Tom. Don't worry. He doesn't mean anything by it. And the guy like storms off in a huff. And then we had another server. I'm telling you, somebody's memorable to be around when you have like 9 stories you remember 10 years later from one lunch together.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so funny. I didn't know about that one. Yeah. I didn't know that story.
Yeah, and it wasn't like anti-LGBT. It was just like he had a problem with his voice.
I'll tell you what was funny. One time we were in Far Rockaway because they were doing the tent meeting. And we had James Witt with us because he was rapping. James is a stocky guy. And so James had on like long shorts, like jean shorts or like sweatpants shorts because he was rapping that night. And then like high top shoes. And he comes into the trailer green room in the back. And Brother McGinnis looks at him. Well, this was actually before we were getting ready to leave for the night. He comes back in and he goes, look at this kid. He's a marvel. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen somebody's calves grow straight into their feet. Well, your calves go straight into your feet. It was so funny. Like I couldn't help but laugh. Like just looking at him. He would like when he came off the plane that time when he was coming down to the baggage claim. He started mocking his wife at the thing. He said, "Look for her suitcase. She's Italian. She's got like pasta wrapped around it because she's always hungry. She's always eating something." He was like annoyed by it. She like stopped. She like wouldn't say anything anymore. Like she'd been around it for so long, she would just shake her head and smile.
I'll tell one more before we move on. One of the last camp meetings he was at of your father's in West Virginia, I was just doing what I do, which is follow him around, like at a safe distance. Like I want to get close enough where he would mock me, but where I could still hear. So sure enough, this Southern lady, which they were the worst combination, was like good old nice Southern Christians that had never heard like a mean word in their life with him. Like it was like New York and the South. It reminded you of those old Budweiser commercials when the New York bartender would ask the guy from Texas, "How are you doing?" And he'd go into this big long story about how he was doing. Like they didn't understand each other. So this large Southern white lady, which I know you're not supposed to describe people like that. I'm white. This is black. This is a Bible. This large white lady in a black gown that had big like triangle sequins on it comes up to him like as nice as can be to introduce herself. "Hi, Pastor Tom. Heard a lot about you. Heard you had a great church. Nice to meet you. Have you always wanted to look like a chandelier?" And then just watch like the color and life drain out of someone's face. And then I would watch knowing I was supposed to feel bad for it, but wishing he would like keep going.
You know what's funny is one time he was at my uncle's church, and so this guy was there who's also like a Southern singer who had heard his reputation. So he wanted to get a few jabs in before he turned the mic over to Brother McGinnis, which was a massive mistake. Massive mistake. And so he gets up and makes some kind of snide comment about Brother McGinnis. And the guy had like a horrible haircut. It was like a butchered haircut. So Brother McGinnis gets up after that guy says that and goes, "Great to be with you." He's like, "Brother Daryl, I wanted to say publicly that I was very sad to hear your barber passed away." and then he goes, and then he goes, "That's a really nice sport coat you have on. Reminded me to change the seat covers in my car." Remember to change the seat covers. You couldn't do that.
Yeah,
People would try to like people would try to even like joke back with him, and he'd go, "Hey, let's just leave the jokes to me, okay?"
Yeah. I laughed at his joke one time, and he turned around to me angrily and went, "You think I need your help?"
He had something for everything. It was perfect.
First time I was sitting
so
at the table
funny.
next to him the first time I met him, and I had a suit on, I still remember, from Express, which at the time was the nicest suit I owned, but it was like $210. And he turns around to me and grabs my suit and crinkles it between his fingers and goes, "This is nice. What's it made out of, crepe paper?"
He said to my dad one time at a Brother Shambach meeting, he's like, "Brother Ted, that's a really nice suit. Where'd you get that? Dumpsters R Us?"
Yeah, he was, it's funny because then you see guys like our age that kiss up to like big name speakers and stuff, and he was the opposite. It was like the more famous you were, the harder he went at you. So
Oh yeah.
I miss him. What about, I wanted you to tell the story of eating the Clams Casino with the tent crew.
Oh, yeah. There was this guy. This was also with Brother McGinnis and his son, Kevin McGinnis. We had finished a tent meeting in New York, and there was this guy from West Virginia, where I'm from, who was on the tent crew, but so clumsy. But he was so big and strong. Like his name was Mike. Big guy, probably 6'6", easily, 375 pounds easily. I mean, that's like without breaking a sweat. He could have been 415, somewhere around there. And strong, man, like very, very strong. I remember, just as a side note to show you how strong he was, one time we were setting up a tent with our youth group in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, in the projects. And when we put the tent out and started driving the stakes down, he was late. He was never on time. He was supposed to be there helping us set it up.
Wait, Teddy. Latoya
Yeah.
Dunbar just said, he told me that he was surprised that my shirt buttons were holding on.
Latoya was in my choir as well. Oh, Miss Latoya. He was ruthless. So we're setting up this tent, and we realized that once we get the stakes like this far in the ground, we were like upset because we realized it was going to almost be impossible setting the tent up because it was all rebar below the ground. So we were all just kind of sitting there wondering if it was even going to happen. But we thought we'd play a prank on Mike. We were like, when he gets here, we'll tell him that we got all the stakes started for him, but because he's late, he has to drive them all on the ground, knowing that like the sledgehammer will ricochet off the top because it's rebar below there. He came in, and you're supposed to hold a sledgehammer apart and then let your hand slide down when you come to the final stroke. He started with it like it was a baseball bat at the bottom. He started with his sledgehammer like that. So he shows up, goes to the first stake, and takes a hard swing and just puts the stake down through the rebar in one hit. I'm like, wow. So he was like so strong like that, but very clumsy. What's funny? He was also our drummer in our youth group and for those meetings. He's the only guy I've ever seen lose his balance while he was playing the drums. And one time we were in like, thank God it was like a shallow platform, like it wasn't high off the ground. He's on the back with the drum kit. You imagine this guy, 375, 390 pounds, and we're doing shout music, and he's playing real fast, and all of a sudden he starts losing his balance to going backwards, and like a dummy, like throws the sticks and reaches out for the toms, like the drum set is going to keep him on the stage. Reaches out for the toms, grabs them, and falls off the back of the platform and pulls the whole drum set onto himself. So like super clumsy. I don't know who on Brother Shambach's tent crew allowed him to have the keys to the forklift, but somebody somehow gave Mike the keys to the forklift. And just another side story, in that same meeting, this is how clumsy, and I don't know who was dumb enough to do this, but they were pounding stakes in the ground, and Mike told a guy, he was like, hey man, hold that stake steady for me so I can pound it in the ground. The guy's like, all right. And he held the stake for him. Mike takes a full swing like that, misses the stake, hits the guy's hand, and broke every bone in his hand. They had to rush him to the hospital. Anyway, whoever gave him the keys to the forklift was like insane. He had backed it over, like they were moving stacks of chairs. He had backed it over and broke like easily like 30 to 40 of Brother Shambach's folding chairs by like backing the forklift through a row of chairs. So destroyed the chairs. Then he goes outside to move the porta potties and picks a porta potty up on a forklift, and he's turned around backing it up, not realizing Brother McGinnis's son Kevin at that time had a like forest green Lincoln. And I don't remember if it was like a town car or what it was, MK, whatever those were. Mike, with the forklift holding the porta potty, is backing it up, runs the porta potty down the entire side of the Lincoln car, leaving a massive blue porta potty streak on the paint job. So Kevin was so angry. I've never seen him. His face was so beet red. He was like, Mike, you're an idiot. So he's like so angry. So we go straight from there to the seafood place, or like the Italian restaurant, I mean. And
so picture it, if you're listening to the story. The guy's a huge, almost 400 pounds, clumsy guy from the backwoods of West Virginia that basically had never been out of West Virginia. And now they're in like Brother Schambach, to reward the tent crew for doing all that work, would take him to a very nice restaurant in Manhattan. So here's this guy sitting there, and then go ahead.
So Kevin, to kind of get back at him, because, Mike, I don't think he'd ever eaten anything like, that kind of seafood with like mussels and calamari and all that. So it was mussels that he was eating, the big black shelled mussels. And he's sitting there eating. And I see Kevin laughing. And he's laughing, and I'm like looking down, and they go, Kevin, or they go, Mike, how's that? How are those mussels and clams? And he smiles real big. He's like, they're good, man. But when he smiled, there was blood all in his teeth and gums. He's like, they're good, man. But let me tell you something. They're crunchy. They're like hard going down. Kevin had told him that you're supposed to eat like the shell and everything, and crunch it up in your teeth. I don't know if he had swallowed or not, but I can't imagine him swallowing like crunched up shell of a mussel, destroying his intestinal tract.
With blood dripping out of his mouth. These things are good.
Literally.
They're making my mouth bleed.
Yeah, good, but man, they're hard. I'm gonna tell you something. They're hard. Kevin's like laughing real hard. So funny.
Closing story.
Man. I tell you, I love ones that happen in church where like things don't go as planned.
Yeah, well, those are good. That's why I'm not telling you, because all the stories I remember are with people getting beat up, and people don't find that funny.
People getting beat up?
So yours are better.
What do you mean people getting beat up? Like in church?
Like in church, or like because of something that, preachers who beat, like when Papap threw that guy against the wall in the lobby of the church, when him and his redneck brother came in to confront him.
And people just don't seem to find that funny.
Like nothing happened. You know about that?
No, tell that.
Some lady got offended in his church. And for everybody that's watching, my grandfather was the first one saved in his family, like you heard me say, and was from West Virginia, where like fighting's not that big of a deal. It's not like today where like if you, even when Teddy and I were growing up, if you got in a fight at school, it was like you got detention. It's not like now where they expel you and you get booked for assault. So, fighting didn't used to be like that big of a deal. And it certainly wasn't a big deal for my grandfather. So some lady got offended at the church, and for the Sunday night service at 6 p.m., her two young redneck sons that didn't come to church came to confront him. So he knows what's, he wasn't stupid by any means. So when he sees them with their like angry look on their face, coming in the door into the foyer, with a surly look on their face, like they're gonna like cause a problem, he bounds down off the platform, up the center aisle into the foyer. Now this is like at 5:58. Church starts at 6, and back in the 70s, people were on time for church. So like the church is pretty full. He had such a look in his eye that the one brother turned and ran out, but he grabbed the other brother, slammed him up against the coat rack, and said, tell your redneck brother that if either of you ever come back in here again looking to cause trouble, you'll limp home. Do you understand me? The guy shakes his head, yes. My grandfather goes, say yes, sir. The guy's like, yes, sir. Takes him and throws him, like physically throws him out of the church. Then turns around, walks into the sanctuary where everyone's staring at, like in horror at what just happened, and goes, let's stand and sing, everybody.
There was a preacher that my dad knew down in North Carolina who was like a big redneck guy like that. And he had this lady that was so faithful to his church. And he didn't know this, but like her husband didn't want her coming to church ever. And I guess he was like a drunk or whatever, but like finally he'd had enough of her coming to church. So like one Sunday morning before she came, he like beat her up in the house, but she still came to church anyway. And she came to church with like black eyes and a busted lip. And that pastor came off and said to her, "What happened to you?" She was crying. She was like, "My husband doesn't want me to come to church. And you know, he hit me this morning and told me not to come." He grabbed his deacon, like his elder, like his number one elder. And it was like Sunday morning, like church is getting ready to start. And he turned it over. He's like, "Let's go." And they went to the guy's house and knocked on the door. And the guy like answered. He didn't even say anything. He just punched him as hard as he could in the face and knocked him down on the floor. He said, "If you ever touch your wife again, I'll come back here and finish this fight."
That's called being a shepherd.
Amen. I don't know why people don't appreciate violent humor stories.
I promise you, people hear that stuff they don't like. It's like, well, I don't, you know, I think we should. Yeah, if you don't like it, he's in heaven. So tough luck.
I'll tell you what's funny. When I was, people have probably heard me tell this before, but I love these kind of stories where like things happen in church that like weren't supposed to happen. What about Pop? Our grandfather had all kinds of stories like that. One time, he was preaching real hard. You know, he was a serious preacher. He was preaching real hard, coming up the center aisle, with the microphone and pointing like this. And he used to wear like big Godfather gold glasses, golden framed glasses that were massive. And he was preaching like this and caught the edge of his glasses and threw them up the aisle while he was preaching. And everybody was kind of like shocked that it happened. And he went up the aisle and grabbed him off the ground. He's like, "Don't worry, everybody. I've got everything under control." And then on purpose, put the glasses back on his face upside down.
That's great.
What did you know about one time when he was laying hands on people? And that lady's wig got stuck on his ring, snagged on his ring. He was going down the line laying hands on people. Laid hands on a lady, her wig got snagged on his ring, and when he took his hand off, her wig came off of her head, but she fell out. So he just took the wig off and laid it on her face, over her face.
That's a great one.
Those are like, to me, I like when the things happen that like aren't, or like something like was supposed to happen, like, you know, it started off as like somebody hoping that it was going to be like powerful, and it ended up being like it was, or in the midst of something powerful. Like the time, do you remember my dad telling the story about the time that the Lord told him to run? And he was like, a dead church, and he didn't want to run because he was like, this place is dead. Lord said, take off running around this church right now. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that, whatever. And then after he had said no, that he didn't want to do it, someone else did it. And like the service broke through, or someone was like, my ear came open. Like it like broke the service through. So he was like, no matter what, next time the Lord tells me to run, I'm going to run. And, and then the time the Lord did it is when it did tell him the next, it was in a dead service. So he said, I said I was going to do it. He took off running around the church and then came around. And when he was running down the center, it was like one of those sanctuaries where it was like on a decline coming down. And he tripped and fell forward and slid up under the communion table, but he ripped his pants open. Kept coming down to the front. Those are like my favorite, because that same thing happened to me when I was in Bible school. But like everybody was like, in that at Rhema, it would be like a massive, like hundreds of people would take off running at one time. And we all did it one of these winter Bible seminars or camp meetings. I can't remember which one it was. And I'm coming down around the corner, and there's a kid. I'm coming down the center aisle. There's a kid coming around from the side. And I had gained, no lie, I had gained 40 pounds in Bible school.
Everybody
like just eating.
Everybody can believe that.
Oh, it's true. just eating junk. And then so I'm like heavy. I
You
didn't even
told that
realize.
like it was like difficult to believe. No lie, I put on weight in Bible class. Teddy?
Yeah.
Teddy
Teddy put on
unhealthy?
weight? I can't believe it.
I can't picture him putting on weight.
No. So I'm coming down. I didn't realize how much weight I had, and my top is going like faster than my bottom. And he's coming around, and I'm like seeing this like in the Robert Downey Sherlock Holmes kind of way, where like you see all the things happen in slow motion before he fights the guy. It was the same way, and like I was like, I'm gonna hit this kid like dead on, and I have no ability to stop this from happening. Like this started in the spirit, and somehow is ending in the flesh. I don't understand. And this kid was like this skinny kid from Michigan. He probably weighed soaking wet. He probably weighed 170 pounds. And I was at like 225 or 230. I hit this kid so hard. Like, you talk about a hockey check. I hip checked and body checked this kid so hard that they had these massive potted plants around the platform. He hit one and shattered it. Where all like the dirt and stuff fell out the side. And then I don't know. I think he was pretty much like at that point, there's nothing you can do to recover. So I think he just acted like he was like out in the Holy Ghost, but I knocked him out. Like there's no way. I mean, I blasted that kid.
Go ahead.
No, what were you saying?
I was going to say, tell about the time you hopped up on the organ, but set it up for, the majority of people go to like small churches where it's a free-for-all. So set it up for what it was like at Rhema Bible Church and like the seriousness of what you did.
Yeah, it was in the prayer and healing school. And so we were having one of those services where it was just like blowing up. The Holy Ghost was moving. And I was like feeling it, but I was on the organ.
And who was preaching? Kenneth Hagin Jr.?
No, this was in the prayer and healing school. So it was like probably Jim Hockaday.
About the one where you went up on the organ. Like without permission.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes. Like, so coming from that Pentecostal background, if the preacher gets preaching, the organist goes back to the organ or just never leaves the organ and just starts playing, behind the preacher while he's preaching. So I had become the organist for Rhema Bible Church. And, they probably had 3,500 or more people on Sunday morning at the time. And so Pastor Hagin, Kenneth Hagin Jr., was preaching, and he really got preaching like hard. And the anointing was there, and I was like, man, I know what I'm supposed to do. I ran from the audience back up onto the platform and jumped on the organ, which like I didn't know was like a massive no-no. I didn't realize it was like
security would tackle people approaching.
No, but I mean, like it was just like out of order because like that's not how they run the services. They don't. It's not like a free for all in that way.
To be on the platform.
Yeah, and well, I mean, I was part of the band, but it's just like they don't do that. Like it's not like I don't think at any time that I'd been there, and I don't know how long before. It's like he doesn't have people like playing behind him while he's preaching and stuff like that. And like you don't just do what you want. Like to give you an example, I got in trouble one time, like I got a talking to for like even not in a main church service, but in like a small classroom style service. I was on the organ and I motioned back to the sound man to turn me up because like I couldn't hear anything. And I got taken aside afterwards, like you never speak to the staff or anybody. If you need anything, you speak to me directly and I'll speak to the people for you, like by the leader. So it's like, it's very structured and very organized, So like for me to just like in a main Sunday morning church service to like run out of the pew, run up onto the platform and jump on the organ, whether I was the main organist or not, I was catching dagger stares from the pastoral section. Like everybody was like staring me down, like, who do you think you even are to like come up on the platform and just like jump on? But I didn't care. I was like playing and like I was loving it because he was preaching. The anointing was there. I was just like flowing behind him. And so anyway, I knew I was going to get tore up and the service ended. And immediately the music director like was making a beeline for me to come like ream me out for like doing that. But Pastor Hagin actually beat him over to me, to the organ, and started shaking my hand real. He's like, man, I ain't never had playing like that in years. I love it. He was like so happy to have me have done it. Looking back, I think it was more wisdom than that. Like I realize now that like he probably did enjoy it, you know, having that. But I think he also was like wise enough to know, like, if I don't come over and give approval to this student is going to get like destroyed by like whoever.
Yeah,
So
but
like I
at the
think
same
like,
time, do you think he would have cared that a student was going to get destroyed if it was
Yeah.
like?
No,
you know-
yeah, I think he liked it. I think he enjoyed, you know, the anointing and the playing and whatever. But I think more than that, I think he understood what was happening, and like was kind of giving me like a benefit of the doubt card. Like he knew that I was probably came out of Pentecostal church and that my heart was right. It was nothing. I had no pride. It wasn't like me wanting to be seen, you know, playing on the platform. It was like me knowing he was preaching up the storm and like wanted to get behind him. And I think he could feel like what was happening on the other side, and knew like, if I don't step in here and just like give my approval, it's going to be worse for him than it should be. And I appreciate that. He was always very, very nice to me. Like I'll tell you, like he didn't always, like, you know, because he was extremely busy, but like it didn't matter where I saw him on the campus, he'd always stop and shake my hand, like, hey man, it's good to see you. Like even if we were in like the bookstore and he was coming through, wherever it was, he would always stop, and he was very, very nice to me all the time.
Let's close out with when the vice president of MasterCard was touring the MasterCard collections facility.
People probably don't know these stories, but these were back when I was like really insane, like probably could have been labeled clinically insane. I will tell you this. I need to tell a few of these because these were in.
Just the one where she's touring the facility. I'm editing
can you
out
imagine?
the other two.
Well, there's more than two. Can you imagine like being in a corporate environment, like where everything is super, I mean like a corporate environment. And I would do stuff that was so out of line. I don't even know how the only way I never got fired is because of how well I performed for the company, how much money I was bringing in.
Well, it's that period of time between 17 and 22, like I'm saying, where you just don't realize. Like
I was 18.
Yeah. Where like you know, things that are considered a prank in high school are like a crime now.
I mean, I can't even imagine. I came back from lunch early one time. I laugh thinking back. This is like a corporate environment. I came back from lunch early for the sole purpose of hiding under my boss's desk to stay there for a good 15 to 20 minutes until he got settled into work. And like once he'd gotten settled into like work, I grabbed his calves and screamed from under the desk. He jumped out of his chair and ran. I was like, "Ah!" Like in a corporate environment, like who does that?
Dude, that's insane. I never heard that one. Okay, so you got away with it because you had the record for most collections. So you weren't doing like the job I was doing. You weren't cold calling. You were calling up people that owed money to MasterCard and collecting their money. So they bring the vice president of all of MasterCard to tour your facility.
Yeah, it was like a very high up person from corporate in New York. And so she thinks two things happened. Once she was coming around, like she was doing her rounds. It was a wide open warehouse call center where everybody was in cubicles, but we had desks that you could push the button and stand it up on hydraulics so that you could stand and type and do the thing. So if you stood with your desk, you were above the cubicles and everybody on the floor could see you and hear you. So I had my headset on and I knew she was coming. So she comes around with like our manager and she's like inspecting the crowd and everything. And I had just disconnected a call, like ended a call. So I stood up with my desk knowing she was coming and I went, I don't care if you are in a wheelchair, ma'am. You wheel yourself down to your checkbook and write me a check. And she came running over. She was like, no, disconnect the call. And I was like, I got this. She's like free, like, no, don't say that. This I got this. Take it easy. But the funny thing was, I think after lunch, she came through like trying to build rapport with like people on the floor. And she had brought like a little Nerf gun with her, like to like shoot people with the little Nerf arrows. And she came around through my desk and she like was coming to shoot one of those arrows at me. But like right when I turned around, she shot and the arrow came and hit me like right in the forehead, but like above my eye. But I knew that it happened so fast. Like as the thing hit my eye, I threw my headset off and dropped to the ground holding my eyes and screaming. I was like, ah! Ah! This lady drops the Nerf gun, takes like 3 steps back and like is just like aghast. She's like, you can tell like in her mind, she's playing out every
like
lawsuit
legal scenario.
Oh yeah, what her severance package is going to be. You know, it's like she's done, and I'm down there writhing around. It was like a great fall of a soccer player during the World Cup. I was like writhing around on the ground, holding my face, screaming. Everybody on the floor was like looking like, what did she just do to him? And then after about 10 seconds of it, I jumped in like, I'm just kidding. I'm all right. She was like, oh. She was like, I could tell she was like extremely happy. What ones were you trying to shield me from when I gathered everyone to a meeting?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Or when they sat the girl with me at the desk.
Both.
Yeah. There were so many that happened. I was not ready for corporate work life, to say the least. It was a great job, and it was a job that I miraculously got because T.L. Osborne and Brother Shambach prayed over me. Did you know
to
that?
Get the best job and tell it.
Yeah. Well, it was supernatural. Like we were there. My dad brought me down to college, my dad and mom, and Brother Shambach was there preaching whatever that conference was called that Billy Joe Doherty would hold at Victory. They would do it every year in the summertime. Yeah, the word explosion. And Brother Shambach was one of the speakers, so he was in town. We were eating with him at Cracker Barrel in the morning before I went out to get a job. And he prayed. He said, Lord, let him find the best paying job that he could possibly find in the city. And then after that, we were at the mall I was getting ready to put in a application at Back Rack Suit Store, and out comes T.L. Osborne. And he had suits getting ready to go to Russia. And he recognized my dad and came over. We were right by the food court. And he said, what are you doing in Tulsa? My dad said, I brought my son to school here to go to Rhema. And he said he's putting in applications to get a job. He said, young man, lift up your hands. So like right there in the food court, so I like lift my hands. And T.L. Osborne put his suits down and laid hands on me. He said, let him find the best job that he could possibly find in the city. So the same thing Brother Shambach prayed. And so it was like later that day, a guy that lived in my apartment complex was like, you need to go put an application in there. Remember, with like no previous work experience. I had nothing on a resume. I got this job in the year 2000, making like $11 an hour, which for like an 18-year-old with no previous work experience was amazing. And then I would start getting bonuses where they'd give me like $500 extra a month. Here's $700 for how well you're doing on top of my paycheck. So it was like, it was wild. Like I do not have that story like a lot of people have with Bible schools. Like, you know, there's like hardly any money. You're barely like I had tons of money. That's amazing to me. From those 2 prayers, you know, God opened up that door for me to get that job. It was like supernatural.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
And I worked at a call center too, and we'd come home at night and swap stories of what we said to people on the phone.
Those were the best.
Tell about Ted Canoe.
I forgot about that.
For people watching, call center jobs are so boring. You make like 900 calls a day, and you know how people treat what are the telemarketing calls? So like,
Yeah.
if you don't do something to entertain yourself, it's like psychological warfare. So me and Teddy would just swap ideas of things to do and say on the phone to like keep ourselves entertained that were, probably illegal. Tell about Ted Canoe.
It's funny because we both had the two least coveted jobs in the world, which is like, you were a telemarketer. I was a collections caller. The two people want to hear from the least. So, yes. And actually, I did that both years in Bible school. It's just that the second year, I switched from MasterCard to a call center for ministries that were on television. So I'd get all their callers. But I was just like so tired of taking these calls that we started giving each other all these like extra things that were like incentive to see how good you were on the phone with your charisma, to see if you could keep people on the phone and still get a payment doing like crazy stuff. So
like escalations.
Yeah,
for a call center.
they were escalations. That's exactly what they were. I was trying to think of that. So we had escalations. So one of the ones we would do is like me and two other guys, we would come up with like a word of the day, and we would see. We would like have a piece of paper with a pen, and every time we said the word during a call, so it had to be done on the same call, whoever could say that word the most times during one call was like the winner for the day. And it would have to be like a super random word that you would never normally say in a collections call. So I can remember one day we picked the word canoe, which you would never say on a collections call. And I just made up in my mind, I'm going to win this. So like most guys would do it like, they would say it like once, twice, or three times in a call, like at a random time, or they'd try to work it in like, I can see you have a high balance here on your card. I didn't know if you had purchased. Is this a purchase for a canoe? I can't tell like what it is. And so they'd try to work it in so it would be natural. I made up in my mind, like, I'm going to win this, and I don't care if it sounds natural or unnatural. I'm going to make it sound like I have Tourette's. So I just was like, I'm going to say it like every other word. So I was like, my phone would ring, and the caller came out, and they'd be like, hello. And I'd be like, hello, Canoe. This is Ted Shuttlesworth, Canoe, from Direct Merchants Bank, Canoe. And Canoe, I am calling, Canoe, because your balance, Canoe, looks higher than normal, Canoe. And I noticed, Canoe, that you haven't made a payment, Canoe, in looks like the last 2 weeks, Canoe. You haven't had a single payment, Canoe. And at this point, you're about 33 days overdue, Canoe. And, I remember the person was like, why do you keep saying canoe?
Yeah,
and I said, I don't know what you're talking about, Canoe.
Yeah. The shocking thing to me is on those call center calls, how you could do crazy stuff and people wouldn't, like the average person just like won't acknowledge anything. Like you can do the craziest stuff. On mine, I would do a thing where like to just keep myself amused, I would read the punctuation into the call. So I'd be like, hi, comma, this is Jonathan Shuttlesworth, period. How are you today, question mark. Good. That's great, exclamation point. Well, I'm calling with Blue Green Vacation Club, comma, and I have an offer for you, period. So then, like, I would just read it through, and people would just be, go with it. But then one guy finally was like, why are you saying the punctuation of what you're saying to me? I went, good question, question mark.
I'll tell you what makes me laugh, because we would leave our jobs about the same time, right? Because I got off at 11 o'clock p.m.
It's Central Time, and I got out at 9 Eastern Time, so yeah, it was like an hour apart.
Yeah, so we would call each other on the phone as I was driving home and just trade all the best stories from that day, which was phenomenal. It was stuff that was like all of it should have been in a movie. But my favorite story that ever happened with you at your call center was when that lady was like indignant about like like berating you, like, why? You must think I'm so stupid. Like, why would I ever take your? No, this isn't when you were doing
that's when
Blue
I was
Green. This
selling
is when you were
mortgages.
doing selling mortgages. Tell that one where you told her like why yours has a higher percentage rate than the others.
Yeah, I did so well getting people to come to the vacation club that they promoted me to sell mortgages. And I didn't know what a mortgage was. I just heard like adults talk about it. I was 19, you know. I honestly had no clue. I knew it had something to do with a house. So then when I asked my supervisor, I was like, explain to me what a mortgage is so I can sell them on the phone. He's like, the less you know about it, the better you'll sell. I'm like, okay, so, you know, they just want you to read the script.
He really said that?
Yeah, because they just want you to read the script.
That's
So
hilarious.
I was like, all right. That was like somebody reading the gospel soul winning scripts to someone that has no clue about like who Jesus is or eternity. So I read about this. I read the script and the lady's like, I'm not interested in that. I already have a good mortgage. I was like, okay. So I would just like start making up ones. I was like, let me tell you about another mortgage we have before I let you off the phone. Or no. This was a cold call again, and I could tell the person was like irritable, so I figured I would just mess with them. They're like, "What's your interest rate?" I go, "Our mortgage is called this. What was it? The 7171? Yeah, it's a 71-year mortgage at 71% interest." She went, 71% interest for 71 years. Why would anyone ever take that mortgage? I went, because regular bank mortgages offer you a good interest rate. Do you know why? Why? Because they're printed on ordinary office paper. Ours are made of pure Swiss milk chocolate. So once you pay it off, it makes a delicious snack. She went, I'm hanging up the phone. I'll tell you one more. And then my job when I worked for the vacation club is I didn't have to sell the vacation. I had to get people on a cold call to go to the kind of like if you get the free tickets at Disney World and you have to sit and listen to the pitch. It was one of those. So I had to get people to go. We offered them like a $20 gas voucher and then something else. I can't remember. It would change. So obviously you're cold calling. People get somebody. This Jaylene Doris said this probably prepared you guys for the insults that you take later in life. It probably did because I would get cursed at so much.
Oh, yeah.
It like you can't even like my feelings are gone.
Yeah.
So this guy, I would just like amuse myself. So this guy is like irritated. I've been asked to be taken off the do not call, or I've been asked to be put on the do not call list 5 times. This is the 6th time I've been called. Put me on the do not call list now. I went, I'm not doing it. He goes, oh, you're a tough guy on the phone. I went, I can be a tough guy in real life too if you have the guts to come down and show your face. He went, where is this vacation club? I'm coming down now. Well, you got to remember, like I was in Rhode Island and we're booking shows for a thing that was like in Michigan. So, you know, he's not going to see me. So I give him the address to the place and, you know, it's not going to bother me any. I'm like, but I bet you, here's the address, but I bet you don't even have the guts to come down. You're just tough behind your phone. He went, you're going to see how much guts I have in about 15 minutes when I'm down there. I went, we'll see. And he goes, which one are you? I went, when you walk in, I'll be the first guy you see. And I'm like, looking forward to meeting you. And he's like, see you in 15 minutes, and hangs up the phone. The next day, we have a meeting before it starts. And they're like, listen, guys, we're not going to be calling Michigan for a little while. We had an incident yesterday at the vacation club. So you figure some guy standing there just had some guy coming off the street and clean his clock and had no clue what was going on, you know, and him trying to get out of it is probably like making the guy, no, I'm telling you, I never, oh yeah, you're tough behind the phone, but now you're going to try to get out of it.
I remember when I worked for that call center the second year answering calls for ministries, I had the absolute worst shift because they made me take the 11 p.m., 11 to 8. So I had like an hour, like an hour lunch, but
Which
I worked
is when
8
you have
hours.
the craziest people calling Christian
Right.
television.
Exactly right. The nuttiest people. And and I answered phones for some questionable ministries too, like whoever had hired that company, but they would do like really, like, really, I'll just say it this way. They would appeal to like really nutty people. So I'd have those people. But here's the thing is that even though we had the overnight shift and you wouldn't get hardly any calls, like I would probably in an 8-hour period, I would probably have, a maximum of like 30 calls, which like coming from the MasterCard world where you're logging like 900 to 1,000 calls a day, that's like nothing. So you had long periods of time where you had no calls at all. But they, for some reason, which I couldn't understand this, they still wanted you to stick to the time frame that they wanted for a call. Like, don't keep people on the phone for longer than like 4 minutes because, we want to open up the lines for more callers.
Which is very difficult to do with people that are up midnight to 8 that call in. The majority of the people that call in are people that have nothing pressing to do and they're like lonely and want to talk to somebody.
Or they're just crazy.
Yeah,
which was
you're right.
That was my experience. So I remember they'd get on me because I'd be like, there's no one calling. And I just want to because if I wasn't talking to someone, I was falling asleep. You can't just sit at a desk at like 4 a.m. and stay awake and alert. You know what I mean? So I'm like falling asleep. It's like, I want to talk to these people. I'd rather talk to people. And they didn't want you to ever go off script. That was the other thing. So every ministry had a script that was pre-written in the computer, and you would just press a number based on what number was on the phone, and it would give you the script of the ministry. They never wanted you to go off script. That was like a huge no-no for the quality assurance people. So I remember this guy called once, and I was like, forget all this. Like, I'm going to just talk to this guy as long as I want. And this guy called in. He was like, brother, I was watching the show tonight, and let me tell you, I got a poem that came into my spirit. I was like, you did? He was like, yes. I feel it's a prophetic poem. I was like, I'm with you. I believe it is. I was like, you know what? I want you to read it to me right now. He was like, it's long. You want me to read it? I was like, read the whole thing to me and take your time. So he's like, all right, brother, I will. So he starts reading this poem, which was like, first of all, it was kind of like nonsensical, but whatever. I had nothing to do. So he's reading the poem, and as he's reading it, I'm writing it shorthand on all these pieces of copy paper, and it must have taken up like 4 pages of copy paper, all the stuff that he wrote in this poem. And like I'm just giving him like encouraging feedback as he's like reading it, and I'm writing. I'm like, that's powerful. Keep going. It's like he's reading the poem, and like after he's done, like, a good 15 to 20 minutes has passed between us talking and then him reading the poem. And I went, brother, that poem is so powerful. I was like, you're not going to believe this. But as you were reading it to me, I was hearing it, writing it, and I've already turned it into a song. He was like, you've turned it into a song already? I was like, it's a song now. He was like, oh my goodness. He was like, you got to sing it to me. Like, luckily I had written it all down on the copy paper. So like, I'm like reading it back to him, but I'm just like singing random notes of whatever he told me. So I was like, there's a man who's standing before the precipice of time, and he sees souls that are there. But there's angels singing around them, and he's singing glory, glory, glory to the Lamb. And he's like, but like as I'm doing it, like I thought he would be mad that he'd be able to tell that it like wasn't a real song. He's getting like very blessed on the other end of the phone. So he's like crying. He's like, yes, yes. And I'm like, I just keep singing it out, and I'm like singing it out. Everybody else in the call center is like half asleep, and I'm like singing out this poem that he gave me.
Was there a supervisor?
Yeah, but I don't even know like why I didn't get stopped or where the supervisor was. I got talked to later about how long the call was. But like I'm singing it back to him. He's like, yes, yes. And like he's getting more and more blessed. So by the end, and I end it real big, like like a big note, and he's coming soon. And he's like crying on the other end, and then like it's silent for a while, and he goes, brother, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm giving up my rights to this poem. He went, it's mine, but I'm not gonna copyright it. He went, I want you to take it, and I want you to take it to the nations. He told me he wanted me to take that poem song to the nations. And I was like, I'll do it. And he was like super happy feeling something. I got a call him the next day. I was like, Ted, we were looking over your call logs from last night. And normally we ask you to keep your calls to about 4 minutes. And we were looking at the rest of your calls, and you were pretty much right on the mark. Except at the 4 a.m. Point in your thing, you had a call that came in, and we just wanted to check with you because we thought maybe you just forgot to hang up and the line was open. I was like, why? How long did the call go for? They're like, 56 minutes. I was like, no, I was actually on the line with a guy. I felt like, why? Why were you? I can't even remember. Like, I was trying to explain to them why I had a guy on the phone for an hour, and that call center was supposed to be 4-minute calls. I got like reamed out. Don't have a call for an hour, which I can never understand because nobody was calling. It's like, what's the point of like ending the call super fast? No one's calling here.
Because of it's the call center's profit margin because they have to pay per minute. So the faster you the faster you get people off the phone, the more money they can clear. And if you keep people on the phone for a long time, it dips into their profit.
I didn't know that.
You telling me the stories of what you used to do at those call centers is what's kept me from using Christian call centers to take calls for our ministry. Because I just picture like a room full of yous. So I'll like like that don't have anything invested in the ministry that they're taking calls for. Waking up out of a dead sleep. Hello.
Yeah. What do you want?
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
I'm thinking of taking my life. Me too.
If I have to work here another day, I will as well. I'll join you. To Ted Brasky. Bill Brasky. I can remember, like, it's true, like, it's not good to have people that aren't invested in your ministry, like, working on it, because I can remember, like, being so tired some nights. They'd bring in, and these are, like, well-known ministries, and I'm sure it's a seed that I sowed that I'll reap. Father, just ask you that not be the case. But, like, we were supposed to, like, how, I didn't understand how we did this. We would have to do quality assurance on people's mail-outs that were mailing out to like 200,000 people or more. So I'd sit there and they'd bring out stacks and stacks of the letters of the mail out, and you'd have to like go through, and they wanted you to sit there and look at every name and address on each letter and like make sure it matched the name and address of the envelope, or like it's like for 200,000 or more people. And your argument might be, yes, but they were paying you to do that. And the argument that I'm making is, yeah, but who does that? Why was there not a better system than to have some tired guy at 4 a.m. looking over your letter versus envelope? But that's I mean, I think it's a mistake to have people working on your stuff that just, aren't invested in your ministry or like care about it. Don't you agree?
Where are you at next?
I'm headed to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, starting January 6th. Then I'll be with Pastor Bob Rogers starting January 11th, I believe. Is that Sunday? Is the 11th?
What's going on in Louisville?
13th. He does the prayer and fasting meetings So I'm going for like Sunday through Wednesday or something like that. Starting the 13th. I think 13th is a Sunday.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So
those are the first two.
Kentucky and Elizabeth City, North Carolina, you said?
Yep. Yeah, and then down to Albemarle at the end for like a week, the end of January.
And tell everybody about your podcast and where they can find it.
The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you can find it. Search my name, Ted Shuttlesworth Jr. Got new episodes coming out Monday and Wednesday every single week. Not to mention Miracle Word University, which can be found at miraclewordu.com. Online Bible training courses for spirit-filled and charismatic believers teaching the doctrines of the Bible. And we're getting ready to launch a new course coming up.
Which one?
In the month of January. Say again?
Which one? Which is the new course?
On faith. Launching the one on faith. And you don't want to miss that. So that's coming up, as well as final plug, Worship Summit 2019, May the 7th through the 10th in South Florida. It's going to be phenomenal. 18 free sessions and doing a live recording for an album on the Friday night. But it's going to be awesome. Last year was killer. Can't wait for this year.
I love you. Thanks for coming on with me. And if
Love
I
you.
don't see you, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I love you.
Evangelist Ted Shuttlesworth Jr., everybody. He'll be in North Carolina, Kentucky, and I'm leaving one out at the end of the month.
North Carolina again.
North Carolina and Kentucky in January. If you want to come see him, then the website's miracleword.com, miracleword.com. And remember, prayer and fasting begins January 2nd in Washington, Pennsylvania, just south of Pittsburgh. And again in Washington, if you don't have anywhere to be for New Year's Eve, come join me. 2019 New Year's celebration at the DoubleTree by Hilton in Washington, right by the casino. That's at 9 p.m., but you have to register. RevivalToday.com. Listen, from the bottom of my heart, I hope you had a great Christmas, and you'll never know how thankful I am that you join us every morning to do these broadcasts. It's been a great year together. So it's been great hearing from you, and 2019 is going to be great. We thank God for everything he did in 2018, and I thought I'd just close out the year with letting you have some laughs. I love you. Have a wonderful rest of 2018, and I will see you again in 2019, this Sunday, Champion Christian Center at the Cannonsburg and Washington locations. From everybody here at Revival Today, from Adalis and Camila and myself, God bless every one of you. We love you. What's up? This is Jonathan Shuttlesworth, and I want to invite you to spend New Year's Eve with us. We have people ask when it is. We always hold it on New Year's Eve this year at the DoubleTree Hotel in Washington, Pennsylvania. It's $60 a person. That covers your meal, and you're going to get to meet hundreds of people from all over the world that love the Lord. When you're a Christian, New Year's Eve's tricky. You either have to stay home or end up going to a place and start the year in sin. We give you a third option, which is to take the first hours of a new year and give them to the Lord. And I'm telling you, it makes a great difference. So I'll see you December 31st. Please register today. We only have 300 spots, and I'll see you soon. God bless you. What's up? This is Jonathan Shuttlesworth. We're at the end of another calendar year, which means it's corporate giving season. We at Revival Today believe there's no greater cause than winning the lost. And besides our crusades, did you know we preach the gospel every day from Cairo, Egypt to Cape Town, South Africa, covering the entire continent along with the UK. We feed 1,000 children a day, many of them orphans. And we're making sure that this new generation is exposed to the power of the Holy Ghost. If that interests you, would you consider making a large corporate donation right here at Revival Today? If you do, I have a nice Dake annotated, genuine leather reference Bible that I'm going to send you as a way of saying thank you for standing with me to reach our generation for Jesus Christ. Have a wonderful Christmas, and I hope to see you soon.